Now, my name's Tom, and I'm from Woven, the Festival for Textiles in Kirklees. And we, over the last few weeks, we've set up a whole new online way of working, and this is part of it. So last month we interviewed, we had a presentation from Julia Roebuck, and today it's Dionne Swift. And a lot of you are here to see Dionne. She's an incredibly popular artist, and we're very proud to present her. Now, we're going to make a start then. So let me introduce Dionne. She's a world-renowned textile artist. She's displayed her work all over the place, and she's been an artist for over 30 years. And we're very pleased to have her. She's a graduate of Goldsmiths College London. She's got a master's in textiles from UC Birmingham, but the main thing is she lives in Home Firth now, and that's why we're really excited to host her, because she's a big celebrity in Kirklees. She's laughing. So here we are, and so what Dionne's going to do is she's going to share her screen so you can all see her presentation, and she's going to talk over the top. As I say, if you've got any questions as Dionne's talking, please put it in the chat box, and we'll get some questions as we go. So over to you, Dionne. If you could start sharing your screen.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I'll say hello, and you can see my face first of all before I actually start screen sharing. I want to say thank you very much to Tom and to all of Woven for inviting me to talk today. You are in my sunroom. Welcome. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. If you've got any questions, as Tom says, please put them in the chat at the bottom. I'm going to talk for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then I will do my best to answer any queries. I kind of anticipate a few of them, so I will try and answer them as I go. Okay? Now, hopefully you can all see this. And Tom, if you just let me know that you can see it, that would be great.
I certainly can. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll make a start. My passion for textiles, and particularly stitch, started with this machine. This was my grand's treadle sewing machine. She'd had it for a good 40 or 50 years before I was introduced to it. And those of you who sew know that in order to get a stitch from a treadle sewing machine, you have to be physically involved in the creation of that kind of motion. You are part and parcel of the motion, movement, that physical activity that creates the stitch. You kind of have to work the machine. So you become part of the process. And when I was about 40, quite a few years ago, I had this realization and realized that actually my love of textiles and my love of process in particular was very much born out of this machine. And I had learned stitch very much through process. So Gran taught me how to sew when I was about 11, and I made a very complex pair of shorts at 11, and that kind of gave me the bug, I guess. I was very tall, could never find any clothes that fitted me, and so always made my own clothes through my teenage years. The other thing that particularly connects me with stitch is drawing. I could not sew unless I drew. I am very much inspired by my landscape, whichever landscape I happen to be surrounded by. The one that you can see here is Home Firth in Kirklees in Yorkshire. And this is the view from my studio. I'm very, very fortunate. But any space that I am in, that I inhabit, I find something within it that I can be inspired by and that I can draw. And drawing is completely entwined with my stitched work. It's essential. I always have a drawing in front of me when I sew. And you can see in this drawing, I've got thicker and thinner lines. and they help to give me suggestions and inclinations about how I would pursue sewing, and which threads I might choose while I sew. I've got a series of images to show you that are drawings on one side, the stitched piece, the comparable stitched piece on the other side. Always my pieces of work start off straight-sided, and any of the undulations in the edges that you might see are all part and parcel of the process. I adore process. I adore being true to the process, true and honest to the materials that I'm working with. And by that I mean I want to celebrate them, and I want those materials to shine and give me their best. I often talk about the fact that I'm kind of like a conductor, and I have, in my orchestra, I've got my sewing machine, I have got my threads, I've got my fabric, I've got the original drawing, kind of like the score, if you like. And it is my job not to dictate what happens when I start to work, but to get the best possible sound out of all of the different elements in my orchestra. So I want to show them off to their best. So when edges are uneven, I am showing and illustrating the process. So the tug and the pull and the tensioning that's created when I'm creating lines of stitch, they create natural tensions in the fabric and make the edges very uneven and distorted. You can see that my drawing here on the left it's not the same as my stitch piece. Stitch piece isn't the same as the drawing. One inspires the other, but I can't do the same things with stitch as I can with, in this case, graphite and oil. I tend to use graphite and oil, they're my preferences. I can actually do so much more with the stitch, but the drawing suggests to me, visually suggests different weights of thread that I might use, directions that I might sew in. So I'm using a process called free machine embroidery. I'm guessing if you're here and you're watching this, you know what that is. And I drop the feed dogs on the sewing machine so that I can move in any direction. But I not only draw with the sewing machine, I paint with it as well, really, because I am moving my threads in particular directions which are influenced by my drawing, and I am mixing colours to try and not replicate, but I'm definitely inspired by what I see. So there are small references to little patches of blue in this piece. This piece is based on a ski slope. And there's a little patch, a faint patch of blue in the snow that gave me a whole nother language within the white pieced area of the piece on the right hand side. This piece got into the Royal Academy summer exhibition a few years ago. The piece that you see here is quite a small piece, and I am incredibly fortunate to say that this is in Diana Springl's collection of work. And here you can see a broader weight, or hopefully you can more easily see a broader range of weights of thread. I have taken the small section in the top left-hand corner of the original drawing to develop into stitch. I've used matte threads, so maybe cottons and wools, with sitting right next to something that's shinier. So I've used a viscose thread or a silk thread that will reflect the light in different ways. And I feel that they best replicate or suggest the original drawing materials that I've used. There's a close-up of that. You can see how the surface kind of undulates. It doesn't lie flat. I love it when it moves. I love it when it warps and distorts. And again, I could force it flat, but I prefer to let it have its own personality and, like I say, be a conductor rather than a dictator of the media. This was a slightly more abstract drawing. It's called Shadow, and this collection of drawn pieces gave me a huge amount. I stripped back the colour that I was working with for quite a long period of time, and so that I could really see and understand the marks that I wanted to replicate in stitch. And here I have used some very heavy wool and gold threads, so you get little snippets of gold. And this technique, some of you may know, I'm actually working upside down on the fabric, and so I'm kind of working blind, and I never know what quite is going to happen until I've turned the fabric over and see that reveal. Now, for me, that is a desperately vital part of what I do. The unknown and the reveal notion, so learning something new every time I work, is absolutely vital. I hate to repeat anything. I don't repeat anything. I can't repeat anything. And I have to be progressing and learning with every new piece that I create. This little section I love. It looks like a total bird's nest to some people, but to be able to control or take that bird's nest to its limit but still be able to carry on stitching is kind of really exciting to me. It just keeps me on the edge of chaos, really. This is the main piece. This is it in its entirety. So I love the fact that it has different qualities of stitch running through it, different weights of stitch. There's a lovely shiny gold section at the bottom which catches the light, and as the light moves around the room, it kind of bends and flows with sunlight. I often exhibit at the knitting and stitching shows and other large shows around the country. In fact, different places across the world. I'm often to be found in Australia or in Holland, maybe Italy as well. I work a lot in Italy and I run my summer schools there. Normally I would spend half my year there, but I'm a little bit restricted this year. This particular shot comes from an exhibition where I actually showed work from a collection of my students, and it was an exhibition called Collective Stitches. So I teach a lot, and as Tom said, I went to Goldsmiths, and from really my final year at Goldsmiths I started teaching, and it's been an important part of my practice all the way through the 30 plus years that I've been working. And this was the first exhibition that truly celebrated all the students to whom I taught free machine embroidery. And this toured all the knitting and stitching shows. It also went to Australia, it went to Holland, it went to Italy. So it's been around and was incredibly well received. And if you are inspired, there is a book of the work that students created, and then due to its success I did a similar project with my print students. On the Left hand side is one of my scarves. It's a hand painted scarf. So not just taking my drawing in stitch, in this case I've taken it into painting and printing onto fabric as well. And this was another students group exhibition that toured. And all the students who were part of this exhibition had all done my online print workshop. I want to go back now to stitch, and particularly a lot of the work that I did last year. This work I called 50 at 50. I was 50, unbelievably, I was 50 last year. And I decided to create 50 pieces to celebrate these 50 years. And all these pieces, or the majority of them, they had been shown in Australia, but for the first time they were shown in the UK at Helmsley Arts Centre. And the work went up a week before we went into lockdown. And so they just haven't had the airing here in the UK that I would have liked. It's quite a disappointment. The kind of wind was taken out my sails a wee bit. But c'est la vie. What I have been able to do, or what I am going to be able to do, is show these pieces and put them up for sale as part of a new venture called Made Makers Online. So I, in the autumn, will be doing, hopefully, Made Marylebone, which is a fantastic contemporary design show in London. But the organisers of that have put together an online event that's coming up on the 13th and 14th of June. And so the 50 at 50 pieces will be available during that particular event for that particular weekend. You can see in these pieces how I've got the drawing and I've got the stitched piece. They can be quite rough and ready drawings, some of them quite small. And you can see here how I'm starting off with an initial layer of stitch on the right hand side. I am mixing colours together, so some of the lower thread colour is mixing with the upper thread colour. And to me, that is like textile pointillism. It is where you're getting little dots of colour from a distance. They're visually mixing on the surface of the cloth, but when you get up close, you can see the distinct threads and distinct colours. I always have a drawing in front of me when I work, as I said, and I use that drawing initially and select threads that I think are going to work within that general colour palette. I quite like using Wonderfill threads because they've got a really good range of weights of thread, and I tend to pick up a lot of threads when I'm round and about. Loads of them are in my studio in Italy at the moment, and I am slightly bereft because I haven't got them with me. And I select threads purely based on their feel, their colour, not having them for I don't buy them for a specific purpose. I just like to have them around. I put a close-up here of this piece. You can see how rough and ready it is. This was a drawing from a community project, a women's community project in Marrakesh, or just outside Marrakesh, that we went to last year. And it was a beautiful place. I therefore wanted to translate some imagery from that into stitch as part of my 50. And you can see close up here the range of different threads that are involved in one small section of a piece of work. There's a very heavy pink thread, which I believe, if I remember rightly, was silk. We've got some sparkly dark green along the edges. And all these colours kind of mix and interweave with one another. There's very rarely one single layer that creates the colours and the qualities that I'm after. I keep going back over things, much as you would do if you were painting. I am painting, but my paint is thread. These are some more pieces from drawings from Italy. In this case, the village that we live near in Italy is called Tornareccio. It's in the region of Abruzzo, which is kind of halfway down and is pretty rural and hasn't been badly affected recently, actually, although their restrictions have been severe. The visiting Marrakesh last year gave me a huge injection of colour, and that definitely came through in the 50 at 50 pieces. Everything was, as I said, drawn first and then developed into stitch. Burano inspired these couple of pieces. Burano is an island of Venice, and all the houses, all the buildings are painted in different colours, and it's a real tourist spot. Would normally be heaving at this time of year. I'm sure it's deserted at the moment. Beautiful, and when it opens back up again, do go. It's completely inspiring, and again, along with Marrakesh, gave me this huge injection of colour, quite different from a couple of years ago when I was really working with monochrome. This is the private view at Helmsley Arts Centre, just that week before we went into lockdown. And there's a little collection of new pieces that I created specifically for the exhibition, and they are based on my travels last autumn, kind of October, November time, when I went to Australia and to Singapore and New Zealand, and I was teaching in Australia for Fibre Arts Australia, and I did, I think, 4 weeks teaching, touring around different regions, and these pieces were inspired by that. Here I have actually stretched the fabric out, and it is lying flat for a change, and you can in these pieces see some bare fabric. I've allowed the fabric to come through. Can you see here the looseness of some of my tension on the stitches? I like that. I like that looseness against the very dense gold stitched areas. It creates a lovely contrast, kind of a light and shade in the sound that's created. I should say as well, there's a little bit about my sewing machines now. Right at the start, I showed you the machine that I commenced on that got me going, but now I work with Janome sewing machines, and Janome as a company helped me incredibly. And there's a kind of semi-professional, professional machine that's called HD9, which just happens to be my postcode here in Home Firth. So it was meant to be, but I use an HD9 Janome sewing machine, which only does a straight stitch. And that's all I need for free machine embroidery. These last few slides are just kind of talk about some of the stuff that I've been up to during the last couple of months in lockdown, because I know it's thrown so many of us. We're all touched by this difficult situation. And I have to say, for myself, I have never been busier. I teach online a lot anyway. And I've been on a huge learning curve, teaching more and more online, but discovering Zoom and teaching via Zoom and teaching live drawing lessons on Zoom. It's quite an eye-opener and very exciting. But one of the first projects that I instigated, along with the African Fabric Shop, Maggie and Bob are neighbours of mine in Kirklees and also part of Woven, with them and with quilt maker Janice Gunner, sorry. I came up with this idea for a big global community quilt, which is called the Virtual Log Cabin Quilt. And you can find details of this on my website. Anybody can get involved. And the idea is that a log cabin patchwork block is a bit like being at home. The log cabin signifies home, but the yellow centre that we're asking everybody for in this particular project is about light at the end of the tunnel. And I think we have got some light at the end of the tunnel now for this situation. I'd be really grateful if you go and check out that project. The resulting virtual quilt will be shown at the Festival of Quilts next year. Another project or another initiative, one of the initiatives that I've engaged with over the last few months is to also create a community quilt for Kirklees. And Lawrence Batley Theatre have asked me to create a series of videos to talk people through just how to create blocks and pieces for that particular quilt. And this little video is my intro, me filming an intro. I have not only had to learn a lot of, or continue to develop my stitch through lockdown, but I've also had to develop skills in videoing, zooming, scrub sewing, and constantly through it all try to find lots of little silver linings. And the piece behind me in this short video I have called Silver Lining. It's got a big silver pathway running into the centre of it, and this extra time that we potentially find ourselves with is giving me the time to get my head down and finish off that piece of work, which for me is quite a large piece of work because it's about 1 metre square, and my focus really needs to be to get that finished. It was a piece that I'd left to one side, and it has been brought back to life, shall we say, through the joy, if we can find joy in this. I will continue to find silver linings through the love that I have for stitch. I can meditate as I sew and lose myself in that piece of work. I'm going to leave it just there. I'm going to thank you for listening, and I'll take questions if I may.
Great, so thank you, Dionne. I think this is the point at which we give you a big round of applause, but we can't do that virtually, but you can see me doing it there. It's marvellous, and it's really interesting to learn about your whole way of working and what you get up to. I mean, I'm going to ask some questions initially, and then it gives people time to kind of think of questions to put in the chat. Just the first question for me, as a fellow artist, I'm not a textile artist, but I'm an artist, and I'm very interested about this process that you talked about. You talked about being a conductor of the orchestra, almost as if you were sort of, there was all sorts of things going on, but you weren't necessarily in control of them, but you're conducting them.
I don't want to be in control. I'm in control of so many things family-wise, I guess, and so many organisational things that keep my business ticking over, and all the organisation with students, all that admin. But I also want to be surprised all the time by my work and learn new things as I create. And if I have a set vision in my head of what I think the outcome might be, then firstly, if it's not what I want it to be, I could be disappointed. I am very rarely disappointed by the outcomes, because there's no real set plan, which kind of sounds bad, but I am working from the drawings and being led by the drawings and interpreting them. I've never got something where I can kind of say, it should look like that. Why doesn't it? It must be wrong. I don't have that.
And what I was going to ask you as a secondary question is what is your relationship to mistakes? So I've got this, we all as artists sort of make mistakes and then throw that away. Do you ever throw bits away, or do you just say you incorporate it into the work?
Very, very rarely throw anything away in that sense. I when I'm drawing, I very, very rarely would rub anything out. I would work over the top of it if I wasn't sure that it was doing what I'd hoped it could do or might do, but I wouldn't take it away. That's the same with my stitch work. I would work over the top of something until it felt right, and put on layers and layers. Sometimes I put on 5 layers of stitch, but I don't tend to. I wouldn't unpick. God forbid. Life is far too short for an unpicker.
There's such a liberation in that sort of decision, I suppose, not to unpick, not to correct, just to sort of keep going.
If you don't have a fixed vision of what the outcome is, then there can't be a mistake.
Well,
it's an undulating route to get you where you decide might be an end point. I don't always know what the end point is.
We've got a comment here. It says, "Not mistakes, accidents of interest," which is a really lovely way of putting it. I've got a few. There's a few questions that are coming up, Dionne, that are very practical, and I don't think I'm going to ask people to ask them because they're quite sort of short questions. Sam asked, what substrate do you use to sew onto?
Everybody asks me that. I like to use wool, and I like to use wool because it sounds nice. Literally, when you're sewing, when that needle is punching into the fabric, it sounds nicer. And that's all part of my orchestral metaphor.
Of course. Caroline asks, what background fabric do you use?
Wool, yeah, wool.
What is the second genome that shows next to you in the silver lining piece?
That's another genome. That is I've got lots of genome. Shall I list them for everybody?
Why not?
I've got a genome 6,000. Well, I got my sister to buy a genome 6,500, an older one, so that when I go to her house in New Zealand and visit her, I've got the machine that I will work for me over there. I have got a Genome 6,600 here in Yorkshire, a 6,700 in Italy. I've got the 1,600 SP, I think it's called, which is the professional industrial model. I've got that here, and I've got the HD9 in Italy, and then the bits and pieces as well. It's embarrassing. Too many.
I was fascinated by the texture on the bird nest piece. I think I've got the name right.
It wasn't called bird's nest, but yeah, I know the thing you mean.
Yeah. And I'm curious because I've tried all sorts of free machine embroidery. I've got a very old Bernina machine that's probably about 40 odd years old, which is a bit of a workhorse as well as a Genome. And I've tried using thicker thread on the underneath bobbin and thinner thread on the top. And I wondered if that's how you got your bird nest, because mine never looked like that.
It is definitely one of the ways that you can do that. Yeah, it's about playing with the tension on the top in comparison.
I always seem to get it in a mess though. So how do you manage to sustain that kind of regularity of thread?
That is the balance. That is the trick. That's taking it to the edge of where it will hang on. Practice on.
So
I started free machining when I was. There is a bit of trial and error, yeah. But I started doing free machining when I was 14. So honestly, I've done 20,000 hours of practice, and you have to listen to the sewing machine. To that sound of the machine can kind of tell you when it's going to go too far and when it's going to go off filter.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so that's the answer to a lot of these questions. Just do 20,000 hours worth of stitching.
Well, you can
also come on a workshop
They're not 20,000 hours, I hope. Okay, we've got a couple of questions.
I said, my Achilles heel is drawing. Don't tell me off, but I might make, but help.
Okay. I'd need to know exactly what your particular issue with that was. I think a lot of the time people, well, that's quite a big open question.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Drawing is very personal, and yes, mark making is drawing. There are so many things that you do that you can class as drawing, and they needn't be conventional drawings. The type of drawing that I probably have veered towards is drawing that helps me to sew. I haven't done that consciously. I think it's just happened organically. The way that you choose to interpret your marks or your drawings is kind of the key thing. And how you go about that is down to analysis and your own personal aesthetic. At the moment, I am running drawing classes every week on Zoom, so this kind of live thing. And got new sessions starting in June if you want to have a look at those. But almost instantly, a lot of the people on those classes are saying, okay, so how can I take that to stitch? One issue with a lot of people who want to free machine embroider, they see my work, you need to understand that what I'm doing is, I use another analogy, what I'm doing is sprinting, and you kind of need to walk well first before you can sprint, otherwise you're going to pull a muscle. So you kind of need to know that you've got some of the basic structures, basic sewing kind of right before you go full steam ahead. So sometimes it might be about reining in. I hate that thought, actually. Anybody would rein in, but definitely step back to look harder, to then be able to move forward more elegantly, so that you can walk beautifully before you start to really sprint at it.
Thank you very much.
Does that help? Maybe a bit vague.
No, there's quite a lot there to think about. Thank you.
Okay.
I think for me, it's listening to your sort of analogies are really helpful. Actually, just the sort of the conductor image that you mentioned, and the sound of the that you're listening to as you're making a visual piece, and what you just said about sprinting and running. I think that's a really useful way of summing stuff up. But I'm interested in the drawing as well, and I think it's about, again, back to that freedom. When you're drawing, is it always with a regard to thinking, okay, this is going to be a textiles piece, or do you just sort of sketch, do whatever, and then you think that could be a good textiles? I'm interested in that process.
Okay. So I never sketch.
Oh,
I have this bee in my bonnet over, it's just a terminology thing, but for me, drawing is a very deliberate act, and it's completely associated with observation. So I'm really big into looking hard, analysing hard, and maybe using very few lines, but they have come very directly from source material. I don't make stuff up. I don't work off the top of my head. I look hard and draw hard. I do a lot of drawing. It doesn't all become stitch. I'm not drawing stuff thinking I must make a stitch piece, therefore I will draw this in this particular way. Maybe I did start with, but I don't think so. But definitely now my drawings have kind of a standing in their own right, and I sell those separately. I sell them as drawings, no mention of the stitch at all, no thought of the stitch at all. Every now and again, one of them really grabs me and I'm looking at it and can really think, yeah, I could get my teeth into that, but not always. I am a real one for creating huge amounts of drawings and then selecting. So I like to do loads and then hone it down and restrict it down. It's kind of selection, really. I like to select, I like to evaluate and select out.
Great. I shall banish the word sketch from my lexicon.
Please do. Unfortunately, it's kind of ingrained in there with sketchbooks, and I use sketchbooks, and I would like those to be rephrased as drawing books, or some mechanism by which you contain a drawing.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Dionne. I was interested in the pink heavier weight. I think it was a silk or a wool thread. Does that go in the bobbin? Because it looks quite thick, or are you couching that on?
It's couched on by being in the bobbin. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks very much. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pauline just asks, is your Helmsley Art Centre exhibition able to go online?
Not online as such. There is a video available. Before I took the exhibition down, before we went into official lockdown, I went in, collected everything, and one of the volunteers at the Art Centre did do a film of me talking through the work. And so that is available, and that is on my YouTube channel and on Helmsley Art Centre's website. I can put that on my website as well. It's been on my Facebook page, so you can kind of see round it. But the work from that exhibition is going to be in the Made Makers online event, 13th and 14th of June. So what I think I'm going to do for that particular event is use my studio and the house as a gallery, and kind of clear the walls and set up a gallery space, and then film that live, and people will be able to see everything, and I will talk through it again in a slightly different fashion, 13th and 14th of June.
And just a quick question from Sharon, do you use normal needles or thicker needles when you work with wool, and where do you get them from?
Okay, I do. My sewing machines need a different type of needle anyway because they are bigger machines, but I use a very large-eyed top stitch needle. A top stitch needle has a deeper groove along the shaft of the needle, which helps protect the threads as they go into the fabric, but also has a larger eye, which eases the threads through. And I would use size 16, if possible.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think that's probably the end of the questions. Unless anyone's got anything quickly for to share, I just got a great comment that says, thanks for a generous sharing of your working process and beautiful work. Dionne, lockdown has brought some lovely things. It has brought some interesting things and lovely things, as well as all the awful things. So yes, I think we can look to the future and the silver linings as well. So just to finish off, Dionne, what are your silver linings?
So my silver linings are literally the piece of work that I'm going to get completed. I am really aware that, we've been here with the whole of the family. I say the whole of the family, 4 of us, got both of the kids back to be with us here. So we've spent really good quality time, quality family time, which is a silver lining for sure. And the learning that I've been doing, the learning curve that I've been on with Zoom, with videoing, and I feel like I've engaged with many more people than I might have done normally. I mean, I would have been in Italy by now had it not been for this. I would have already been to Morocco. I definitely wouldn't have been chatting to people on a weekly basis through live chats on Facebook, for instance. So every Friday I do that at 1 o'clock. And so things like that, this kind of engagement, okay, in a different format, but it's still exciting. It's in a different way. Moving forward, there will be a new normal. And one of the great things about creative people is that we are able to adapt and it's been interesting seeing how that has happened. I panicked for the first few weeks and then kind of settled into finding ways to help people, and some of the scrub sewing that I've done has obviously been helpful to the NHS, but actually by chatting to people and by offering kind of online content like this, like the Facebook live feeds, the extra workshops I've put online, stuff like that. Hopefully it's helped inspire and keep people creatively busy and kind of mentally active to help support mental health in some way as well. So I found all these extra little bits that wouldn't have been there without this situation. So I will take those away as silver linings as well.
Great. I think that's a great place to end it, Dionne. And there are a couple of questions that have come up in the last couple of minutes, but I think we're going to have to, for time, to cut it short, because we are trying to keep these within 45 minutes. So thank you so much for delivering that beautiful talk, but also answering questions with such grace, and putting up with my drawing question as well, the sketches.
If anybody does have any extra questions that they want to direct to me on a Friday at 1 o'clock on Facebook, they can do that there. I can't always read them quickly enough, but I am live there.
So live, is it on every Friday at 1 o'clock?
I'm trying to do it every Friday at 1 o'clock. I was doing it every day, and it was too much. I couldn't sustain it, so I'm just on a Friday. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want to catch Dionne there on Facebook, and your website is DionneSwift.com.
DionneSwift.com. Everything you need to know is there, and you can contact me there too.
Okay, great. Well, we must say thank you to Dionne, but also thank you for coming to watch this today. It's been a lovely session, and it's been so great to have such engagement through the chat and to hear the voices of a few people. Thank you so much. And we're going to be back in June and July with future passionate people, and we'll let you know all the details about that soon. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, and to Woven for hosting this and for organising it. Thank you all for coming. I'm really, really grateful.